From the lowest to the highest, from the furthest to the nearest, from the smallest of the smallest to the greatest of the greatest, yoga is about all of life, everything we do, all of existence. My name's James Bogue. Welcome to the Whole Life Yoga Podcast. Today I'm going to speak about Āsana. Now, Āsana is often these days that aspect of yoga or yoga practice techniques that people first get exposure to. So sometimes when people hear the word yoga, they might think of people performing shapes in space or sitting in a certain type of posture or position. These postures that are very conducive to a flow of energy through the bodily vehicle in a way that is conducive to clarity and harmony, these are called asanas. Asana is a posture, is a position, is an attitude which is conducive to the clear, coherent flow of energy and information through the bodily vehicle, so the whole field of our individual psyche can experience greater clarity and greater presence. Asana is one of the 8 limbs of traditional yoga practice as set forth in the beautiful text Yoga Sutra, which is the distillation of the foundation essential teachings of yoga. Now, there's a lot that one can read about asana. I'm talking on this subject today because I received a question from a student who has been exploring yoga. I think she's doing a yoga teacher training program, and she's read various resources online and says, what is the story with asana? What does asana really mean? So in order to respond to the question, I will start with the Yoga Sutra. The Yoga Sutra is the work of a great rishi, a great sage called Patanjali, and the sutra form is ultra distilled. And sutra means stitch, it also means thread. So all of the stitches, all of the sutras in the text, they are woven together with the single thread. And my teacher described the Yoga Sutra very beautifully as the stitches that weave together the fabric of unity. As I've continued to explore them, I also have come to think of the Yoga Sutra teachings as those stitches, those teachings that can help us weave greater harmony into the fabric of our everyday lives. Asana is an aspect of traditional yoga practice. But it doesn't just mean making shapes in space. Making shapes in space, what makes that yoga? Well, the idea is this bodily vehicle, this miraculous bodily vehicle, it's endowed with many different qualities, and it's part of what we might call nature, prakriti in Sanskrit. Nature meaning that which is born and which will die. And in between those two great changes will be subject to change. So we are part of nature. While strangely and extraordinarily from my perspective, some human beings in recent centuries have come to consider nature as something different from human beings. To me, this is just a completely erroneous view. We are nature. We are part of the field of existence. We are part of nature, that which is born, which will die, and in between will be subject to change. Now, when we live in the realm of nature, we also live in a world of pulsation and cycles. So I could pulsate one of my hands and I could draw a circle with the other hand. And my 2 hands in this way are symbolizing what it means to be alive in nature. Life is pulsation, it's expansion and contraction. It's the day and the night, the summer and the winter, growth and decay, opening and closing. And it's also a cycle, as the up cycle and the down cycle. Today it's May, and in the northern hemisphere, the days are continuing to lengthen. We're moving towards the fullness and the expansiveness of the summer season. But in a few months' time, then we'll begin to close in again. The days will shorten and we'll move towards the winter. And so the year itself is pulsating, the planet is pulsating, we are pulsating because we are part of nature. And in this realm of nature, we experience this interplay of these pairs of opposites, such as heat and cold, light and dark, up and down. Now, yoga is the practical means to cultivate harmony, balance, integration amidst all of this whirling wonder of change and the play of these pairs of opposites. And asana, it gets right to the heart of it. This is a beautiful thing. Asana is just one aspect of traditional yoga technique or yoga practice. But encoded in each aspect of the technique is the whole system from a certain perspective. Now, when we look into the Yoga Sutra, the text by its very nature is ultra condensed, it's ultra concise. This is one of the kind of necessary features of a sutra text, one of the defining features of a sutra text. It's a very distilled. And Patanjali, the great sage who gave us the Yoga Sutra, is an extraordinarily gifted sutrakara. Perhaps that's not the right way to say it. He is a sage. He is a rishi. He saw all of the truths of the Yoga Sutra. His experience was such that he was then able to present this very condensed teaching in this extraordinary way. Now, some people say Patanjali says very little about Yogasana because he devotes only 3 sutras. It's some 30 syllables, only that, in this second chapter to the subject of asana. But I would say the idea that Patanjali says very little about asana is very mistaken. Even though Patanjali gives us only a few syllables on the topic of asana, these syllables are pregnant with so much practical import. These ultra-distilled sutras offer so much guidance. The first sutra that Patanjali offers to define asana, Sthira Sukham Asanam. Asana is at once sthira and sukham. So we'll look at these Sanskrit words to begin to get an idea of how much is being encoded in this initial defining sutra on the topic of asana, the seat of yoga. Because asana, though it means posture and attitude, position, for example, its primary denotation, asana, means seat. So asana is not just the seat of our physical body, because this is a yogic term. It's the seat of our whole awareness. It's the seat of our individual being. It's the seat of the whole field of our psyche. And this seat, according to Patanjali, if it's to be a yogic seat, it should all at once be sthira, which means steady, and it should be sukham, which often gets translated as easeful. So asana is at once steady and easy. At first glance, we may begin to notice a certain play of opposite forces, steadiness on the one hand and easefulness on the other. Steadiness, which implies a certain tension, a certain engagement, and easefulness, which implies a certain relaxed quality or relaxation. And asana certainly is this space, this place, where the seeming pairs of opposites meet and draw forth each other's complementary potential. But before we explore that a little bit further, I'd like to just focus in on the Sanskrit word sukham, which is often translated, as I mentioned, as easeful or easy, because the Sanskrit word is so beautiful. Sukham. Now, kham means space. Another Sanskrit word, a synonym, is akasha, the space in which everything exists. When we are manifest beings, when we are part of nature, we exist in space. And how is this space? The great masters, the great research scientists of the yoga tradition, just like the great researchers and mystics of spiritual traditions from all around the world, thousands of years ago, they recognized that the space we live in, the space we exist in, the space we experience in, it is not an empty space, but it contains sound. It contains vibration. And research scientists of more modern times have come to similar conclusions. We exist in a dynamic, pulsating realm. And as human beings, we're only able to hear a tiny little sliver of the whole spectrum of sound that is around us. So, Sukham in Sanskrit literally means a space in which there is a good vibration. So, Su as a prefix means good, agreeable, and Kam means space. But Kam, it already suggests this idea of a field of vibration, a space in which there is vibration. So, Sthira Sukhamasanam, Yogasana, is a space of sustainable good vibrations. This is Yogasana. It's not a fixed point. It is a dynamic equilibrium. As we move through life, we will encounter different vibrations. The vibration may change as the season changes, as the day moves, as the sun rises during the day and then falls as we move towards the night. When we move into places that are populated by different people or different animals, the vibration's going to change. Different places on this planet have a different type of vibration. What does it mean for us to stay or to cultivate or practice a state of sustainable good vibrations? Like any yoga practice technique or any aspect of yoga practice, really this all develops from the practice of sustained presence and awareness. So asana, yes, there are all sorts of yoga practice techniques where we can work with the body in physical space. These can be quite demanding. We are cultivating a balanced state, and sometimes in positions in which we might not be so familiar. So this recruits the powers of our awareness. If, for example, we go to a Yogasana class and we're invited to take a particular posture or shape, one that we've never made before or one that we've barely made before, just staying balanced in that particular orientation in space, it may recruit all the powers of our awareness. We can't afford to be off in thoughts about what I need to do tomorrow, what I should have done yesterday. The task of staying balanced in this unusual orientation in space recruits the powers of our awareness and invites us more fully into the present moment. Then from there, with skillful instruction and an awareness of the appropriate principles to keep exploring from gross to subtle, that form, that shape, that particular asana, that particular stance or position or attitude or posture of the body in physical space can invite the practitioner to then refine our awareness of what it means to inhabit the space of existence in a more sustainably balanced, easeful, and dynamically balanced way. So asana, like any aspect of yoga technique, is an ocean. And the more we explore it, the more we begin to fathom its extraordinary depth. But initially, asana is a way that very quickly we can begin to deepen our understanding of what we can do in the reality of our physical body to invite a state of awareness that is clearer, that is more balanced, that is more conducive to sustained easefulness and alertness. Now, one of the questions that sometimes comes up around asana is the question of I went to this yoga class and there was this particular sequence, and then I went to this yoga class and there was a very different sequence, and I went to this yoga class and here we did just a few postures, but we spent a lot of time exploring them. Why are there so many different ways? What's the real yogasana? And the real yogasana is the one that you are doing now, is the one that is working to foster balance and harmony now. Yoga is very pragmatic. The Indic system as a whole, it recognizes there's no one size fits all. Everything in existence can be poison, everything in existence can be medicine. It all depends on the situation, the constitution of the person or persons involved, and the dose. And what can be an appropriate dose to foster balance for a particular individual It might be very different day to day. And so sometimes it might be optimal, for example, if I want to cultivate balance, to do something very dynamic, to do something that's quite metabolically demanding. Other times it might be very helpful for me to do something that's very stabilizing. For example, to come into foundational stance postures and hold them, be in them, feeling the energy circulate for several minutes at a time. That can be a very grounding practice. But if I'm feeling very sluggish, I might want to do something that's more dynamic. Similarly, if I'm feeling a little bit constricted, let's say, for example, I've been cooped up on an aeroplane or in a bus or train for some long journey, and then I want to create more space in my body, I might want to have a blend of spending time in postures to really invite spaciousness, but also doing things that are more fluid to help energy flow and circulate and create a little bit of a sense of revitalization after feeling a little bit constricted when I was in the car for that long period of time, for example. So what asana gives us is so many possibilities to help foster this state of sustained good vibrations, this state of sustainable easefulness. And that can then teach us how to work more broadly with these pairs of opposites or these changing forces of life. Sometimes the energy will be more vibrant, sometimes it will be more subdued, sometimes the temperature will be high, sometimes it will be low, sometimes I'll feel dry, sometimes I'll feel juicy. What is the appropriate means to cultivate balance and harmony in this situation? And so working with asana is a wonderful way to help us tune in to the extraordinary intelligence of this miraculous bodily vehicle, and so work with it to recognize its underlying deep capacities and its subtle essence. So sometimes people think, oh, the body is just this heap of stinking mess. It's just it's subject to decay, it's full of parasites, it stinks, Fair enough, there is truth in that. But the body is also this miraculous, beautiful vehicle that's full of an extraordinary intelligence that we haven't even begun to fathom. The body knows how to do so many things. And asana practices are ways to help us tune into more subtly, and so regain, remember, rehabilitate so many of the amazing gifts of embodiment, so we can actually work with the intelligence of our bodies. Sometimes in the world today, people can get estranged from the body. To give a kind of silly example or an obvious example, a friend of mine who is a coach, one of her clients came to her and said, oh, I think I need to get tested for food allergies. And my friend the coach said, why? And the client said, well, whenever I eat this, and this, I don't feel very good. And so my friend the coach said, why do you need to get tested? And then the client said, yeah, because I feel I need to know what's wrong here. And then the coach said, well, it sounds to me like you've already been doing the test. If you already know that these 4 food items leave you feeling lousy, why don't you just continue your own experiment? Take them all out of your diet for a month or 6 weeks, and then try adding one of them, because maybe it's not all 4, maybe it's 3, or maybe it's them in combination. But you do the research. Work with the intelligence of your own body. It's constantly giving you feedback. And when we work in this way, we empower ourselves. And this type of empowerment, it begins to permeate the system. Because once we start to tune in to the extraordinary feedback mechanisms and support systems within the body, we will gain a subtler understanding of all the resources that are really at hand. So asana, because it invites us to cultivate this sustainable, balanced easefulness in the bodily vehicle, it becomes this tremendously powerful means or mechanism to start to get to know ourselves more deeply. And ultimately that's what yoga is all about. Experiencing the real potential of this incarnation and then recognizing who we really are, what we're really made of. Now, asana, as Patanjali has defined it in his initial sutra on asana, Sthira Sukhamasana, is that state, that space, that seat of awareness in which we experience all at once steadiness and easefulness. Asana is the seat of sustained and sustainable easefulness, a place of sustainable good vibrations. But more broadly, we can understand asana is that state, is that space in which all the pairs of opposites come into this beautiful dynamic equilibrium. So when we work with yoga asana in a more dynamic way, not just a seated asana, we start to explore the play of forces like engagement and relaxation, pushing and pulling, working in two directions at once to expand the space of the center. When we contemplate for a moment steadiness and easefulness, at first glance, principles like that could seem like they're opposed. But really, we cannot have the one without the other. If I want to experience genuine steadiness, then that has to be complemented with a certain ease. If it's not easy, then it's not genuinely steady. Similarly, the other way around. If something's going to be genuinely easeful, it has to have a certain steadiness to it. Otherwise, I can't really relax into it. So steadiness and easefulness, they're not really opposites. They are mutually complementary qualities that can draw forth a deeper potential that is waiting to be experienced within them both. And this applies more broadly to these different pairs of opposites or opposed forces that we experience in life. And this is one of the reasons why in some yoga traditions, in tantric lineages especially, marriage is considered this beautiful metaphor or this beautiful symbol, or indeed a vehicle and a container for yoga practice. And the idea being in a beautiful marriage, in an appropriate marriage, then the two people who join, they bring to that junction, to that union, different but complementary qualities. And when the two parties work together, they can access capacities within themselves more easily with the support, the reflection, the complementarity of the other than if they were just working alone. Of course, from the yogic perspective, one can do it alone. But for many people, working with another is tremendously helpful. Similarly, while ultimately there's certain aspects of practice we have to do alone, working in a group, working as part of a satsang community, a group of people who come together to explore what is, to explore what's real, this is tremendously helpful. So yes, ultimately each of us has to walk our own path. No teacher can do the work for us. No partner can pull us along with them unless we are also fully participative in the endeavor. But nonetheless, we exist in relationship to the rest of life. And so this idea of being in a relationship in which we are actively cultivating a dynamic equilibrium, we're actively seeking to bring into the collective a presence, an energy that is deepening, refining, expanding this sense of vibrant, dynamic harmony. This is really at the essence of yoga practice. So asana, yes, it refers to postures, it refers to positions, it refers to whole systems of technique. Asana is also the seat that one takes to meditate. And meditation is the central, foundational yoga practice technique. And asana is the bodily position that one assumes or cultivates to facilitate meditation. By extension, any type of physical practice or physiological energetic practice which is conducive to, which helps invite the body into a state of greater harmony is by its very design, or is automatically, we might say, conducive, at least to some degree, to more easeful access to meditative states. So asana is part of meditation. Asana is the seat of meditative awareness. Asana is the seat of yogic awareness. Now this is a big topic, and there's a lot more that I could say, but for today I will leave it there and say that asana is the seat of yoga. Yoga is a state in which the seeming pairs of opposites have been invited to meet, such that they can draw forth each other's complementary potential. And anytime we work with asana, that's what we're seeking to do, to invite ourselves into a more balanced state, a place, a space that's more conducive to the experience of sustained meditative presence and awareness.